So one of the most fascinating parts of understanding extra-dependent teams comes from research into communities and practice. This is the work of Etienne Wenger around layers and trajectories. And so what we're looking at here are 3 layers of learning around a point in the middle. And this is where I fuse communities of practice with social identity theory. Right in the center, we have what's called prototypicality. So the people right in the center of those layers, imagine that people sit in those layers. We'll talk about this in a little while. The person who would be the prototypicality would be somebody who would be your the best example of somebody in with that practice. So think of a risk manager, think of a police officer, think of a doctor, think of a member of parliament even. But right at the heart of it, you can think of somebody who is your best example of what it is to be one of these people. So at the core of this notion of a dynamics of learning within a community, within a common practice, is a sense of identity. This is a sense of we-ness. We are similar to each other compared to them outside the team. And so us and them is one way of expressing identity. And the prototypicality is what good looks like, what the best version of this looks like. Okay. 3 layers are peripheral, active, and core. So think of 4 layer have operated the best practice within this extra-dependent team. On the outside, we have peripheral members, and those people are people who are in the team, but they're either just on the way in or just on the way out. And then in the middle is the active layer where most team members will be. Typically, they are solid team members, they're contributing, they're learning, those sorts of things. So the key thing to understand about the layers of learning is everybody within those 3 circles is legitimate. There's a legitimate place to be had. They have a subjective experience of them being there. Everyone is unique in that regard. They're positioned relative to each other and the practice that they're sharing. And then this notion of instituted is that this can be really formalized, like doctors are structured into junior doctors and consultants and things like that, or vicars could be put together as curates and vicars and things like that. Or in your team, you might have a junior member, a senior member, those sorts of things. So we start to formalize these as well. Then what we can do is we can actually place people within each of those layers. And so these black dots now indicate where, let's say, a extra-dependent team of 6 members are all positioned somewhere within these 3 layers. And so you can see straight away we've got a core member in there. We've got somebody close to it on the who's perhaps edging in towards the core on that right-hand side. We've got other people who are solid active team members. And then we've got a peripheral member up here. And then this person here is just edging into the team. They're just somewhere ahead of that. And so the newcomers are people who are new to the team. They start at the periphery and they move typically into the active. They may still be a newcomer in the active, but this is about how the rest of the team incorporates them. So I have come across newcomers who have been in the team for something like 18 months and are still seen as the newcomer because it is relative to everyone else. And then I've been in teams where the elder is the 18 months because nobody else has been in the team any longer. So it's all relative to each other. Elders are interesting in as much as they hold the history of the team. So they've been around for the longest or one of the longest, and they've known where the team originated, where it came from, some of the reasons why it's changed, who left, some of the ghosts that are in the team. Oh, when such and such was here, this is what we used to do. This was the old manager. We used to do it this way. Those are the sorts of things that their elder can hold. Now put that elder in the core, but they don't have to be in the core. They can be elsewhere as well. So they don't have to be best practitioners, for instance. It can be helpful that they are, but they don't have to be. And in my book, I worked with a team where an elder was in the periphery, and that was really problematic because they knew the history of the team and they behaved nothing like anyone else in the team. And they were obstructive and problematic, and they were still an elder, and effectively they were stuck in the periphery. So it's quite an interesting way of mapping the team to help everybody in the team appreciate and clearly articulate where everyone else is in their learning, and in order to help each other learn better together. So everyone has something to offer wherever they are in the circles, in the layers. And then I talked about trajectories, and so there are slightly different trajectories. I'll take them in order here. Here are all of them in one form or other. So first of all, you have an inbound trajectory. You can see them. In this case, it's the newcomer. They're on the edge of the peripheral layer. They're inbound because they are learning rapidly. They're likely to be learning from other people in the team. Maybe they're buddied up with an active member, somebody who can help them to learn the essentials and what it is to do sufficient practice. And then they can be left alone and still be inbound because they're learning from core members and the best practitioners. On the other hand, you have people who are outbound, and those outbound people, they might be leaving the team, so they're outbound in skills, but also they identify as being outbound. I'm leaving the team, I'm thinking and believing myself to be elsewhere, and so they start to behave differently, and as a result they are outbound. They can be rapidly outbound if they're leaving the team. On the other hand, you can have people who are gradually outbound, and they are losing ground relative to other people. And those are the sorts of people you need to have conversations with to stay, to help them to maintain their position, if nothing else, or to improve that. And so the insider is an example of somebody who's maintaining their position relative to where they are. And so there's still learning going on. They're not just doing nothing, because the world around the world around this team is moving constantly, and so learning is a constant process. And so you have to learn just to maintain your insider position. But you can see there are two insiders, one in the active layer and one in the core layer. Core layer members could still be inbound or outbound. In this case, it's an insider. They're more likely to be insider because it can be quite challenging to improve with so little sort of space towards the center. But it's definitely worth encouraging. And then we have a peripheral layer. I mentioned before about the elder who was in the periphery, and they get stuck. The peripheral trajectories are problematic because they're not in and they're not out of the team. And so people can get stuck feeling, I'm a newcomer, been a newcomer for ages, or I'm not making headway, I don't get this. They're asking questions of themselves. They're asking questions. Do I feel part of this team? Do I belong here, or don't I? So it's worth paying attention to those sorts of people. And then last one, I discovered this trajectory as I was working on all of this work and writing my book, is the maverick. And the maverick works when you recognize that the whole of the practice can change. So it's not a static 3 layers. The 3 layers can actually up sticks and move. And the maverick, in effect, is somebody who is heading in a different direction. They may be trying to renegotiate the notion of the practice. So it might be that the existing core members hold a particular methodology or a particular set of beliefs, and the maverick is questioning those basic assumptions, those basic beliefs, and replacing them with new ones. And so they might be heading in a sort of strange trajectory, neither in nor out. That it's just different, with strong beliefs about what the practice should be that it currently isn't. Of course, they can be really great innovators, but they can also be problematic, in particular if core members refuse to acknowledge new ways of thinking. And so those are the trajectories. Everyone has the opportunity of learning from each other. Newcomers offer fresh perspectives. Core members offer an easy guidance to what best practice should be like. Everyone learns with each other, from each other, for each other, so that everybody in that practice can be stronger. They can use that practice with other teams outside of the extra dependent team.